Welcome everyone to today's webinar, an introduction to digital credentials with Accredible. Before we all get started, please note this webinar is being recorded and we will be sending that recording out to the email address you registered with after this webinar is over. We have quite a few folks on today, so everyone's going to be muted except for our presenters. If you do have questions or comments, please post those in the Q&A window. That should be accessible in the panel over on the right-hand side of your screen. We will be monitoring those questions as we go, and we'll try to get as many of those questions as possible answered right at the end of our webinar. So my name is Cody. I'm with Accredible's marketing team, and if you're not familiar with us, we are the world's leading digital certificate and badging software. Over 1,000 companies trust us to issue their digital badges and certificates, and we issue more than 1.1 million credentials each month. And that number grows every day. We are the only digital credentialing platform with full white label functionality, the only platform with a streamlined recipient sharing experience, and we have the distinction of being the highest rated digital credentialing software on independent review sites like G2, Capterra, and TrustRadius. Today, I'm joined by Duncan, Accredible's VP of Sales and a digital credential expert. Duncan has spent years in this industry, from supporting digital credential end users to architecting digital credential platforms, and of course, helping hundreds of organizations through evaluation and testing processes. Today, Duncan is going to share information on what digital credentials are, the idea of the recipient experience, how to design, issue, and manage credentials through software like ours, and the branding and white labeling functionality you should have with a credential management system. They'll also go over some general benefits that digital credentials can provide. And without further ado, let me hand things over to the person that you really want to hear from today, Duncan.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Cody. I appreciate the introduction. So my name is Duncan Mitchinson. I'm VP of Sales for Accredible. Looking forward to taking you through this session today. So, for a lot of you, I'd imagine that most of you are kind of looking or potentially thinking about starting a digital badging or digital credentialing program. And I'm hoping today will give you a good insight into the value that a platform like Accredible can provide both you as an issuer and, of course, the recipients of your credentials.
Duncan, I think we lost you there.
Yeah, so I lost a bit of sound there. So what I want to start with today then is just kind of basic functionality. And I want to look at just like the fundamentals of what a digital credential is, perhaps for those who really don't understand or know what they are. And for me, I want to take it back to how credentials have been delivered in the 19th and 20th and in even the beginning of 21st century. Historically, of course, with paper. Now, if you have a degree or you've received a professional certification, I'm sure you've received something like we're looking at on the screen from IEEE or Florida State University here. And, typically this is what was sent out. And what we're trying to do at Accredible is, sorry, one second. There we go, is start to bring credentials much more into a fully cloud hosted platform. So the credential that we're looking at on the page here is essentially, this is the recipient view for Accredible. So we're working with issuers to pull all of their credential data online to deliver an output that looks something like this. Now, at the heart of digital credentials for me is really going to be the metadata for these credentials. And of course, not too much has changed there from the paper counterparts. We need an issuer name. We need to know who it was issued to. We have grade data potentially or important dates that are attached. But digital credentials do allow us to start to add much more information to this as well. So things like competency tags or evidence or transcript data, which we'll look at in depth as we go through this. Now, I think the biggest difference for me as we move into a kind of a digital credential format is that we can start to take this metadata and utilize it to showcase much different visualizations. Now, moving kind of clockwise from the top here, we've got that kind of typical view, which you're all going to be used to. We're just taking the certificate view and putting it online. On the right-hand side here, we have digital wallet cards. This is something that only Accredible does at the moment. And essentially, we're taking the metadata for the credential and writing it directly onto an Android or an Apple wallet. You may have used this when you've had a flight, perhaps, or if you use Apple Pay or something like that. But we're seeing associations now start to use this on job sites so people can quickly showcase and verify skills. We also have the ability to issue things like blockchain credentials. Essentially, this is us writing the metadata to something like the Bitcoin blockchain, so we can create an immutable record that could be verified at a later date. And then finally, last but no means least, we have open badges, which is essentially us taking an image that quickly showcases skills and competencies. The thing I really want to get across today, when we're exploring digital credentials, is that we don't have to pick and choose between these. And this is probably one of the biggest advantages. For each achievement that you offer, there is an opportunity for us to offer every single one of these different outputs for that single achievement. And why is that important if you are embarking on a digital credential journey? Well, a lot of this is going to be like, yes, of course you want to get value out of this as an issuer, but really we want to start providing more intrinsic value for those recipients as well. And the more outputs, the more use cases we can give them for their digital credentials that they've worked hard for, the more likelihood they can utilize those credentials to get a better job, to get promoted, to get their first job, the thing they took that piece of learning for. And a platform like Accredible can start to open up those avenues. Now, what we're looking at here is essentially where we've scrolled down underneath the certificate on the recipient view. And I talked about those extra bits of metadata. We're quite restricted, if you like, with the real estate that we have on a paper credential. They're great for vouching for an individual. It's great for knowing that, Duncan went to Harvard and was able to get a really, first-class degree. But I think they don't really allow us to start to drill down into the granularity of how an individual moves through a learning path, or the learning outcomes, or the particular skills and competencies that have been gained. So I think one of the biggest advantages of digital credentials is that we can really start to showcase much more information about that particular credential. And these are real life examples that we're looking at here. So you can see that we've been able to tag a description, we've got those competencies and evidence. And for me, what we're able to do here then is that this isn't just then a certificate that just vouches for an individual. This is now a fully online digital portfolio for that particular piece of learning, which ultimately, if someone like an employer perhaps is wanting to vet a particular individual, gives them a greater opportunity to understand the skills or competencies that an individual has earned within these particular areas. Now, I'm going to drill down into badges a little bit more than the other formats. I'm sure that the vast majority of you here, if there's anything sexy in credentials right now, it's definitely badges. I'm sure the vast majority of you who are here are wanting to kind of understand how you can launch a badging system. And I really want to kind of go into a bit more detail about why I think these are so powerful and why we're seeing adoption grow so massively of open badges. And I think understanding the history and the way that they've been created and the frameworks behind them is important for this. So we adhere to something called the Open Badge Standards. It's what we comply to. This is the largest open source framework for badging in the world right now. It was actually created by Mozilla back in 2011. And essentially what they started doing was they took that metadata that I'm talking about, and they actually started baking it directly into the badge image. So what this means fundamentally for recipients is that these badges become incredibly portable. So you're not locked into Accredible if you issue badges through us. That individual can take that PNG to anywhere that accepts that format. They can download it to their computer. They can put it onto LinkedIn. They can utilize it anywhere they need to. So it's very portable. But for you as issuers, it actually remains incredibly secure. So essentially, because all the metadata is going with it, I can find a badge anywhere online, or an individual could send me a badge as an employer. And what I can do is I can run it through one of many different independent verification tools that are available online, extract the metadata, and prove unequivocally whether or not that person did or did not receive that credential. So it adds a lovely layer of security and verification behind your credentials. And finally, because this is the largest actual open source framework that's being utilized, you then become part of that community as well. There's lots of different programs utilizing this, which is beneficial to you as issuers and of course the recipients as well in their ability to use these credentials in various places. Perfect. So I want to talk a little bit about design. If we know the type of metadata that we want to bring in, we know that we want to create badges. Of course, how they look, the aesthetics behind them is going to be incredibly important. So one of the things that we like to say at Accredible is that your brand should be the weight behind your credentials, not ours. We really believe in that. And That flows through everything that we do, whether that's our badge creation and the way that we support you in setting up badges or certificates, or in the recipient view and the white labeling that Cody touched on. So these proprietary designers that are available in our admin dashboard, and these will allow you to bring in things like your own logos. You'll be able to bring in your own colors. You can start from scratch. It's something we often get asked, is whether or not can I just bring my own designs in? Can my designers design them in Illustrator and bring that in? So there's lots of flexibility there, but ultimately you're going to be able to set up designs that either look exactly as you need them to, or if you've already got designs, import them and have these credentials branded and look exactly as you need them to. And you've seen a few examples of that, and I'm sure you agree that each one looks kind of different in its own right, and follows the kind of branding that company wished and hoped for. So once we've got the designs and we know the outputs we're aiming for, and we know the kind of metadata points that we want to pull in, we've actually got to get that data into the system somehow. And there's a few options here. And my advice is probably a little different depending on the type of program that you're looking to launch. I've worked with lots and lots of different issuers and, different sizes. If I were launching a program where maybe I had a couple of hundred recipients, I would probably look at our CSV spreadsheet option. I think the opportunity there is to essentially, on a weekly or monthly basis, export data from your source of truth and import it in. So Accredible normally looks to plug into something like an AMS system, a CRM system, or an LMS, a proprietary system, anywhere that your student data or your membership data is living, and actually have that data be kind of pulled into the platform. In the hundreds, it is quite possible to do that via CSV upload. After which, as we get into the thousands, I am an advocate, and perhaps even in the hundreds, if we're looking at a native integration, I am an advocate for automation. I think one of the biggest advantages of launching a digital credentialing platform is that we can start to remove some of those human elements, remove some of the time that we're spending on our credentialing. And whether that's utilizing a native integration that Accredible has built for you, so it's just plug and play, or whether you have a development team who want to maybe use our open API to create a custom solution, or if you look at a platform like Zapier, which is if this, then that, and it essentially allows you to do things, what they say, clicks, not code. There's lots of opportunities to pull that information in. What I would say is that if you do want to have a conversation with us afterwards, obviously the integration and data feed is going to be an important aspect, and we'd be more than happy to have a further conversation to see which of these elements fits your needs. But there's lots of flexibility, again, dependent on which path you decide. Now, assuming we've done all that correctly, we've chosen how we want things to look, we know which metadata bits are coming across, we've connected things correctly, all the data is flowing into Accredible now, we need to get these credentials to the individuals. So how are they delivered? I would say the most popular option at the moment would be email delivery. So this is where we essentially have an email triggered once you deliver that data. So whether that's the CSV upload or through one of those integrations or API connections, you can fully tailor this email. So you get to set the address it's sent from, you get to set the logos, the content, all of the information. Again, it can be branded as you need it to be, so it looks and feels on the kind of the aesthetic that you want. But ultimately, it's going to have a call to action in there which says, view my credential, view my badge. You click on that, and the recipient will be taken immediately to that recipient view that we started on, where they can start to interact and engage with their credential. And a key thing that I will mention here just about Accredible is that we have tried to make a seamless approach here. So there's no need for individuals to log in or create a login when they actually come through that first email. They actually click and they're immediately authorized as the owner of the credential to start interacting and engaging with it. So it really creates a nice seamless process to get them into the system. Now, on the right-hand side, this is probably a bit more of an advanced option for any of those who are looking to do a bit more of an embedded solution. So what McGraw-Hill have done here is they've utilized a mixture of API, single sign-on, and white labeling to essentially embed Accredible directly into the SimNet platform. What that allows them to do then is to have a learner move through a learning path, hit the prerequisite requirements for that particular course, and then deliver Accredible inside the proprietary system. So there's big advantage to this is that it really doesn't push the learner outside the platform. They don't have to go to an email or to a secondary place, makes it seamless and keeps them inside and learning. They can then go to the next step. Both options have been designed and kind of optimized to get people engaging, as you can see from the kind of immediate login from the emails or single sign-on on this side of things. So both are great options, but there's different kind of varying options available just depending on your kind of use cases and needs and desire, I suppose, to do any custom development work. So lastly, then, before we move on to just a bit of a Q&A, I just want to go through a couple of use cases to highlight where there may be value for yourselves or your recipients. So the first thing I want to start with is social sharing and brand awareness. And I don't think this is always the first thing that people think of when they think about digital credentialing or launching a program. But for me, it can be one of the most impactful. I've worked with hundreds of our clients over the last few years to get them to start thinking about this as a potential growth and marketing tool. So, I think I love this for two reasons. So what we've got here is we've got a little snapshot of the recipient view, and they hit the page, they're immediately encouraged to share. They can share across LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, a whole multitude of different options that are available as well. We've really optimized for LinkedIn because it's the one that we've seen the most uptake on, especially in the Western world. So with a single click from that page, they can start to share this credential directly with their peer network. Now, I want to highlight two things that I think are awesome from this. The first one, from the recipient perspective, they are able to get immediate social proof from these credentials. So in a moment of pride and joy, in real time, their credential is issued to them. They immediately share that with a peer network across LinkedIn, and they're able to then immediately showcase those new competencies and skills. This has a secondary benefit, though, that they are just broadcasting your brand, because we've actually got the aesthetics here. You can see in each of these examples that we've got the aesthetics that we expect. So we're actually just broadcasting your brand directly to their entire peer network. And I think the opportunity here is that we can utilize this. We can start to harness your alumni, harness your membership, encourage them to share credentials. And then once they've shared them, we can actually have that show up in a peer network, which on a platform like LinkedIn is highly likely to be a target audience for your courses, and utilize that to pull traffic back and have it as a growth engine, which I'm going to show you some analytics shortly as well that show how we tangibly prove that out as well. Now I have a little example here, and I'll let you read the quotes from DMI here. It's funny, I suppose, if I'm looking at these examples, some of these are huge, and this person on the left here of the screen has got nearly 400 likes, which is obviously just incredible. 149 comments. This comment, this kind of section here from Twitter is not as liked, but I think it really showcases the power of what these shares can do. I love this interaction that a person shares their credential, and then you've just got someone who's interested in the course asking about it, and you have that person who's taken the course just immediately advocating. It's such a nice moment, and it's so easy to actually do. And I think it just adds that extra string directly to your bow of marketing. And you can see some of the results here that we have from the Digital Marketing Institute. We do have a case study which we can share after this, which talks to this, but they've had huge success from utilizing the platform from a marketing perspective and digital credentialing from a marketing perspective. So I also want to talk a little bit about security and verification. Now, we touched on this, through the lens of digital badging, but naturally we want to make sure that the entire credential is secure. So the things that I'll point to here that we're really trying to underpin when we're launching a digital credentialing program, especially when you're going to get into scale, verification and having people actually ask you whether a credential is legitimate becomes a problem at scale. In fact, institutions and organizations have whole teams dedicated to actually ensuring that credentials can be verified and they're legitimate. Well, digital credentialing is trying to remove that whole step. We want to make credentials easy to verify in real time. So you'll see that every credential here has a little verify button where it can be clicked and actually engaged with to prove whether this credential is legitimate. We vet all our issuers to prove they're real. And we even are one of the only providers that have QR codes, so that if this credential should be printed, then it can actually be verified. It will actually take you straight to this credential where you can interact and engage with it. And what I'll say is, as I go to the next slide, give this a go. If you've got a smartphone, get your photo app out and try and, I've tested this out. It did work for me. So scan this, try scanning it with your smartphone. There's a bigger version here. And you'll be taken to a page where you'll see that credential and you can interact with it. So why are we doing this? Why are we interested in security and verification? And I think this study by ADP, for me, is at the heart of it, right? So They looked at 2.6 million background checks, and they found that 23% of resumes state fraudulent credentials. So let's put that into perspective. If you're hiring right now, a quarter or just under of the people that you're talking to are potentially lying or exaggerating about the credentials they own. Why is that happening? Because it's too hard to check them. It's too hard to verify them. So we, when we're talking about digital credentials and what the benefits are of launching a program, we want to ensure that we are protecting your brand. We're not devaluing your brand or the offering that you have, by ensuring that verification can happen in a simple process and an easy way where everyone in a single click in real time can check whether a credential is legitimate. And that's what digital credentialing can offer your program. Pathways and stack credentials, you may all have heard of micro credentials. They're definitely a bit of a buzzword in the industry at the moment. There's lots of opportunity here. We're always trying to ensure that we're engaging individuals, that we're pushing them through a learning path, that we're getting them to the next step in the process. And ultimately, of course, getting completion rates as high as possible is going to be one of the highest things that individual issuers are looking at every single time. What digital credentials can offer is the ability for us to create linear or non-linear pathways that really incentivize and drive individuals up, through that pathway to get them to complete the next step. And we have at Accredible a feature called Collections, which can showcase to individuals, and you're seeing a little bit on the bottom right hand of the screen here, how far they've gone through that particular pathway, what the next step should be, which is great because it pushes them to it. But I think the biggest thing that this offers issuers when we're moving to digital credentials is really it allows you to gain more insights into where the successes are and where the problems are in your pathways. So Accredible can start to deliver data to showcase where the biggest drop-off rates are, or what the particular, if it's a non-linear path, like where people are moving next. So you can start to use that data to make better decisions on your learning paths. And finally, then before we move into a Q&A, I want to touch a little more on that data analytics. It's so important to us. We're so data-led. I mentioned that idea of things being tangible. This is incredibly important to us. It's not good enough, I think, for us to say, yes, we're going to deliver engagement, and yes, we're going to deliver shares onto LinkedIn, or yes, we're going to be able to deliver clear data back to you. So what we do is we put a robust analytics engine behind this. So if you're to bring all your data into a platform and create digital credentials, it makes it a central repository for those credentialed issued. It lets us understand where engagement is taking place. It lets you understand where your recipients are actually interacting online. It allows you to track that marketing benefit, which means that we can create a clear kind of link between the data and a return on investment. And finally, at a much higher level than just the learning pathways, it allows you as issuers to make much better decisions on, whether that's your learning design, the credentials you offer, or any of the kind of ongoing solutions that you have. I want to thank you all for your time. Really appreciate everyone listening. I also appreciate that that's kind of digital credentials in 15 minutes. So it is not an exhaustive list, I think, of benefits or the things that a platform like Accredible can offer. But happy to open it up now to Q&A. And Cody, I think we've probably hopefully got some questions to answer.
Absolutely. So thank you, Duncan. This has been very informative so far. And for all of you on today, feel free to post any questions that have come to mind or anything that comes to mind as we're going through other Q&A over on the right-hand side of your screen there. So the first one that I have for you here, Duncan, is do we get to set our own descriptions and tags on the credential? I think this is talking about the skills that you went over earlier on.
Yes, absolutely. We offer a lot of flexibility in that sense. So you're able to set your own descriptions, your own tags, your own designs, all of that core metadata that we talked about that's being attached to those credentials is down to you. And you have that kind of control and customization to add any information that you need to on a per achievement basis.
Excellent. The next question I have for you here, could you talk a little bit more about what it means to be blockchain secured?
Absolutely, yeah. So there are various forms of verification here. At a very high level, essentially what we're able to do, and we utilize the Bitcoin blockchain for this, we're able to actually write the metadata credential into that Bitcoin blockchain. And our verification tool, what it's doing is actually going away, looking at that data, checking a record that we added to that blockchain and comparing it to the data we have. Why is this valuable? Essentially, once data is actually written to the blockchain, it cannot be changed. So it can't be faked or spoofed. It is literally sealed there in time. So this can be hugely advantageous for credentialing, because we then have an immutable record, and that's what I meant by immutable record, something that cannot be changed, that we can always check, like, was this, is this record true? Is it verifiable? So it adds a layer of security in that, I think is unprecedented previously, prior to blockchain technology coming around.
Excellent. Thank you. The next question I have for you here is, do I have access to control which social feeds my recipients use?
It's a good question. At the moment, we have set social feeds on there, and there isn't a flexibility and customization on that. I'm always happy to take product feedback, so it's definitely one for the product team. But at the moment, those are set. I think there's probably about 20 or 30 of them, and there's not a choice of what can be put across there. There is flexibility in terms of that recipient view. We could turn social sharing off, but you wouldn't be able to define a specific social channel.
Excellent. Thank you. And the next question for you here, could you talk about the LMS integrations that we have native integrations with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had that slide up before, and we're happy to share some documentation about this. So the ones that we kind of looked at there were things like Brightspace, Moodle, Canvas. The biggest advantage of these for me is that they're basically plug and play. You copy over your API keys. You don't need to be a developer to actually get it connected. And once they're actually then set up and running, we can feed data without any development work. So I've seen, lots of people are utilizing our Canvas, especially the Canvas and Moodle integrations. They're nice and easy to get going. And, I think if you are looking to launch quickly, then obviously a big upfront development work is going to cause months of delay. Inevitably, it takes time to do something custom. We've seen people get up and running with those integrations, the native ones, in days or a week, because it's that simple to set them up.
Great. The next question we have here is a little bit of a longer one. So preface it with, this is an organization that has more than 15 courses. So is it easy to create different certificates and link them to the names of the participants?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's one of the things that we'd look at if we were doing a kind of deeper demo into the admin dashboard. You can set up what we call groups, and you have a group for every achievement you'd be offering. Within them, as I mentioned, they can have their own metadata. You can create unlimited certificate and badge designs and attach them to those groups, and then feed recipient data in, so that there won't be any complexity. To put it into perspective, we've got issuers who have thousands of groups and millions of recipients in there, and the platform's managing it at that scale, and has been designed to be streamlined at that scale too. So there'd be no problem with having those 15 in there.
Excellent. All right. I am seeing a couple more questions here, but they are outside of the normal scope of this introduction. So if you have a question that we didn't get to, someone on our team will be reaching out to you right after this webinar is over to make sure that you get the answers that you need. Thank you, Duncan, and thank you everyone for joining us. Remember, you can start a free trial of our software anytime from accredible.com, or you can get in touch with our team at accredible.com/contact. We've helped thousands of organizations get up and running with digital credentials, so we can offer advice and insight into architecting and successfully launching your digital credential program. Thank you again, everyone, and thank you, Duncan.
Thank you.